How quickly do you think we get a decision from the Supreme Court?
What's that smell in this room? Didn't you notice it, Brick? Didn't you notice a powerful and obnoxious odor of mendacity in this room?
We preview the craziness in that Atlanta courtroom this week as the judge presiding over Young Thug's criminal trial threw his defense attorney in criminal contempt and ordered him to go to jail. The state Supreme Court has put a pause on all of that while they sort things out. But in the meantime, joining us to discuss the case that has everyone talking this week, Atlanta defense attorney Andrew Fleischman. Andrew, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So there are so many issues to get to here, but can we just start with what is your takeaway from watching what happened in that courtroom?
It's just like a wrongness turducken. Like, the judge shouldn't have had the meeting. He couldn't keep it a secret. He couldn't put someone in contempt for it. He did the wrong type of contempt, and another judge should have made the contempt order. So everywhere you look, there's another layer of something that went wrong. And that's why we had such an extreme national response.
There's a lot of deference to judges in society, the decisions they make. Obviously, we put a lot of trust in them. Can you explain how extraordinary it is, one, for the judge to meet with the prosecution and the witness in the first place without defense and what that might suggest, and two, how extraordinary it is to throw a defense attorney in jail?
I mean, every judge knows you're not supposed to meet ex parte, and there's some very limited circumstances where you can, but this was extraordinary, not because the judge did it, which is bad enough on its own, because there's a rule that says that when this happens, which can only happen in an emergency, you have to tell the other side promptly. Well, instead of that happening, he got angry when the attorney brought it up. And yes, too, what's so extraordinary about this is the lawyer learned there's no gag order. There's no order of secrecy. And ethically, you can't tell people not to tell the defense things like this. And in response, rather than address these very serious allegations, he threw the lawyer in jail. It's one of a kind. I can't think of another case like it.
Can you imagine what this says to the public about the judge? I mean, do you think that this suggests that the judge may be corrupted here?
I mean, I think what it suggests is that this was routine, right? Because the judge really had an expectation that this would not go to the defense. You heard the state also suggest that the defense was wrong to find out about this. You heard Adrian Love say that additional sanctions were needed. This seems like if they were comfortable keeping it a secret and acting like no big deal afterwards, that this must be a routine part of how that court operates. And obviously, as an appeals attorney in Atlanta, that's something I want to know more about.
Talk a little bit about the defense bar in Georgia and the people who kind of came to back Brian Steele after all this happened and exactly how that went down.
Well, the Georgia Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers has a strike force of just great lawyers who come in when you get thrown in jail, which happens once in a while. And probably in most criminal defense lawyers' career, it happens to you once if you're any good. So these great lawyers, including Ashley Merchant, the president of the association, came down. Of course, they know this law backwards and forwards. They came and explained to the judge. And you saw they persuaded the judge that he couldn't do civil contempt, but he wanted. He had to do criminal contempt. So even there, they were already sort of schooling a judge who was reluctant to be learning new things.
Brian can't file his own appeal, but he had someone do it for him. Can you talk a little bit about who did it for him and the appeals process that's happening right now?
Brian Steele is an amazing lawyer who married another amazing lawyer. So his wife went ahead and wrote that notice of appeal for him, was ready to mandamus and do everything else. She was on the spot almost immediately, and her filings are perfect. There's not a typo in them. I don't know many people who could do that in such short notice, let alone when your husband is the one who got thrown in jail.
So it's up before the Supreme Court right now, but the Georgia Supreme Court did something interesting. They put a pause button essentially on the jail order, but they also said, you know what, we're going to take this issue right now. Can you explain how extraordinary that is and what that maybe signals?
Well, there is an argument that the Supreme Court of Georgia had jurisdiction because it's a murder case underlying it, but they're questioning whether that's true. And they're kind of just like, you know what, we don't care whether we have jurisdiction or not. We're going to grant cert and hear it. Probably because this is an issue of such importance to the public perception of whether Georgia courts are fair. And you can imagine they want to go ahead and put people's minds at ease about that.
Brian Steele made an interesting request when he was ordered to jail, although that's not happening right now. Talk about that request and why that's needed in the first place. What the kind of the underlying import here of a defense lawyer's job?
Well, I mean, the request he made, which everyone is jealous he got to make, was that he could be with his be with his client in jail. He could work on the case.
He wanted to be in the cell with Young Thug.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to be in the jail cell with Young Thug.
In the jail cell with his client, Young Thug, so he could keep working on the case. And that is Brian Steele. That man works incredibly hard, and a trial requires 12-hour days at the best of times. But it also shows like the best things about the bar. Even when something bad was happening to Brian, He was out there making sure the record was preserved to protect his client. He was out there wanting to be in the jail cell with his client to protect his client. There is a special relationship between a good lawyer and the client he serves, and Brian Steele really sort of was emblematic of that.
And the judge seemed at least to grant that request. If he was going to be in jail, he was allowed to be in the cell with his client so they could prepare the defense for trial.
And of course, because that was a very smart request from Brian, because if the judge had said no, he could say, well, my client's defense has been impaired by this wrongful contempt order. And that was another way to win on appeal. So not only was it a badass thing to say, it's also just a very smart way of creating an additional issue on appeal.
Just quickly here at the end, how quickly do you think we get a decision from the Supreme Court? 10 seconds.
6 months to a year.
10 seconds.
6 months to a year.
10 seconds.
6 months to a year. Sorry to say, it probably will not be quick. But with any luck, we will get oral argument, and we will get to see someone try to defend this judge's order in court. I think that will be very good TV.
And with cameras in the courtroom, Georgia will let us all watch, something other courts should take note of. Andrew, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Hit that like for deal with Christian. Yo, for deal with Christian. Smash that bell for DWC. Yo, smash it. Just smash it. Hit that like for deal with Christian. For deal with Christian. Smash that bell for DWC. Yo, smash it. Just smash it. Hit that like for deal with Christian.